Hey everybody, Tom Woods here. I don't normally share chess games on my channel, and I don't expect to do so again. So if this isn't your kind of thing, you should of course just move along and watch something else. But I happen to mention on one of my two email lists, I have a business-related email list and a libertarian list, and on the business list this past week, I happen to mention a chess game back from, well, all the way back in 2001. As a matter of fact, just a few weeks before 9/11, August 20th, 2001, back during a brief period when I used to play competitively. I don't have a current rating because I have not played in so long, but I would estimate my current rating to be somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe between 1650 and 1700, so no great shakes or anything, but it means I'm a strong amateur. If you play casually, I'm going to blow you off the board, and I can occasionally give a strong player a good game, but I'm good enough that I can appreciate a beautifully played game, and I enjoy playing myself, but that really is as far as I ever really need to take it. I'm very, very happy to be just an amateur at this game. But all the same, I had a game that I mentioned because I was making a point with it on my email list in which I just blew the opponent off the board. And that's not really fun. Well, okay, it is kind of fun. But ideally, you want to have a game that's a real battle, that if you win it, it is a real feather in your cap and you can have a real sense of pride. But this, I just blew him off the board. And so I had somebody ask me, I would love to see this game. Do you happen to have it? Well, because I played it competitively and I've kept my little chess notebook, I, of course, have all the moves recorded. So I thought, well, what if I play it out on YouTube for people to look at? And I should say, I have not run it through an engine. I am sure there are multiple brilliancies that I missed, and I'll feel silly when people tell me about them. But honestly, I wish you would. Stronger players in the comments, feel free to recommend your improvements. Maybe I missed a win at one point or another, but I'm being humble enough to just show you this game unfiltered, without the benefit of an engine, without knowing what foolish mistakes I made. But I just like the way it came out because it all just came out so nicely, and the pieces just all cooperated so beautifully that even though it's not an ideal game in the sense that it wasn't like a long, drawn-out strategic struggle, still I have a sense of satisfaction about it, and I feel like there's a certain elegance to it, at least for a player of my skill level. So let's go ahead and give it a shot here. This is Woods versus Frank Drazel, or actually it's Drazel Woods because Drazel is playing white. There are so many Frank Drazels in the world, I'm not embarrassing him by mentioning his name. So he plays the common e4. I play d5, and of course the common move for black here once white captures the pawn is to play queen takes the pawn. I don't play that way. I like knight f6, the modern Scandinavian. And then white goes in for the Icelandic Gambit with c4, trying to hold on to that d-pawn, and that generally is a bad idea for white. Just don't be greedy. That pawn is gone. Just write it off. Don't try to hold on to it. Disaster strikes when you try to hold on to it. A lot of flashy things can happen in the Icelandic Gambit. So reasonable for black here. Of course, we want to hit out at that d-pawn would be c6 or e6. I like e6, and white is going to recapture on e6 in general, because if he does something else, then I will capture on d5, and then when he recaptures, he has to deal with the isolated d-pawn, so he's probably going to capture. And then I played bishop takes e6 here. And now white plays d4, which might seem like a good move because he's getting a strong center here. But then I come back with the pretty strong bishop b4 check. Not impossible to deal with, but he plays the seemingly natural knight c3, and now he has to confront my knight e4, which is a somewhat tricky move for white to confront. And he decided, looking at this, that the best thing to do was just to strike out at me with d5. And so I didn't see any reason not to take the knight. So knight takes c3. And because, of course, if he takes back with the pawn, then bishop takes c3, check, forks the the king and the rook. But he doesn't do that. Instead, he plays queen b3. And I think now he's thinking he's really got me over a barrel because my knight is threatened, my dark square bishop is threatened, and my light square bishop is threatened. So he figures he may be thinking, I don't know exactly how this is going to turn out, but something has to go my way. But unfortunately for him, it doesn't, because he's overlooked knight takes d5. Check. And now he can't capture the knight because he's in check. He's got to deal with that. And he can't take the checking bishop here with his queen, because now with my knight on d5, the knight is protecting the bishop. So now everything is being held together, and now he's got to figure out what to do. And what he decides to do is the hideous king to e2. So you might think in this position, well, I am going to have to pay the piper here because my knight's threatened, I'm going to have to move it, and when I move it, the bishop will no longer be protected by it, the queen can take the bishop. But appearances are deceiving here, because as far as I can see, it certainly looks to me as if knight to c6 is a pretty strong move here. Because if he then plays knight takes d5, then I play knight d4 check, which of course forks the king and the queen. So he doesn't have time to take that knight. So I am still holding everything together, and incidentally, this knight move has added another defender to this bishop on b4, so that when inevitably I do want to move the other knight, that bishop will nevertheless be protected. So I played knight f3, which is a developing move that also, of course, covers the d4 square, so I can't get that devastating fork in on him. So now I played knight b6. So now I bring my knight to safety, and now, of course, you can see there's a double attack on the c4 pawn, which will be very painful for white if I'm allowed to play bishop takes c4, because then I'm attacking the queen and checking the king at the same time. So he definitely does not want that. So it's another predicament for him. And so he decides instead to go on the offensive. And he plays bishop to g5. Now, I could go ahead and capture and be attacking the queen, but why complicate things? I don't even want to have to calculate whether I should do that or not. Let's just get rid of this attack on my queen. I realize f6 is ugly, but in this position, with this lead in development and everything else, I can easily get away with playing f6. So now he's still going to deal with the c4 problem, and his bishop is attacked. So it seems like f6 is a pretty good move. So then the queen goes to e3. And now, of course, I cannot capture the pawn on c4 because I'll be in check. The bishop is pinned. So I played king f7. And king f7, not only does that protect this bishop, which was unprotected, but it opens up a very dangerous square for the rook on e8. So king f7, and he played b3, I guess to protect the c4 pawn. All right. But the problem with that is that doesn't really protect the c4 pawn, because I'm going to play bishop takes c4 anyway. Bishop takes c4 check. And the reason I do that, of course, is, yes, of course I'm going to lose the bishop, but now look where the rook is going to go. It's going to pin the queen to the king, and it's going to win the queen. So he plays b takes c4. I mean, I guess he's got to get something out of this. And then rook e8. So white played queen takes e8. I played queen takes e8 check. I guess his was also a check. He played bishop to e3. And then I just played knight takes c4. I mean, why not? Why not? Simple move. Why not do it? Just win a little bit more material. And then he played g3. And I guess he's playing g3 because he's got to... none of his pieces are in the game. You know, he's got a bishop that's pinned. He does have a knight that's developed, but his rook's in the corner, has no way to get out because the bishop's in the way. The other rook's still in the corner. So this was all because he tried to hang on to that c4 pawn at the beginning of the game. Get your pieces in the game instead. So he's thinking, I have to get this bishop out of here to connect the rooks and get another piece in the game. So I presume that was the motivation behind g3. And so now I just played a simple move. Knight takes e3. I mean, why not? Why not simplify? I have an overwhelming... He should resign at this point. I have an overwhelming position right now. And so he played f takes e3. And then I just played bishop to c5. And now I have two pieces heading down toward that e3 pawn, and so he resigned. So obviously, not a strong performance by white, but it does go to show what black can do in the modern Scandinavian when white goes in for that c4 move to try to hold on to that pawn. The lesson is, don't be greedy, my friends. Don't be greedy. All right, let's hear in the comments. I would love to hear what you think about this game, how I played, anything I missed. I am a student of this, and I would love to learn. So thank you guys a lot.